Hey, Amy,
Yeah, Juan?
give me that beat.
It's Baseball Shangri-La with Amy Cuevas and Juan Ramirez.
What's up, party people? And welcome to another episode of Baseball Shangri-La. She is Amy Cuevas, and I am Juan Ramirez. Just let's get some business out of the way. If you guys are listening to us on the audio portion of the podcast, please remember to subscribe to the podcast, rate us, write us a review. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Hit that notification button, give us that like, leave us some comments. And most importantly, make sure you guys are following us on the social media. On X, you can follow us at BP Shangri-La. On Instagram, Threads, and Twitch, you can follow us at Baseball Shangri-La. So let's start the show the way we always start the show, and that is with some base running blunders. Do we have any base running blunders, Amy?
I have one. So in our effort to educate the public on the proper pronunciation of the players on our last episode, as we were talking about Josue de Paula, as we were going back and forth with the right pronunciation, wrong pronunciation, at some point I hybrided it. And my primo texted me to let me know that I said Josue at one point. So my bad. That was on me. So we do know it is Josue de Paula. So that was my bad. I biffed that one.
Wow, you guys really are, you guys really pay attention on this show. You guys are real sticklers for this kind of stuff. I have one also, Amy, and this one was brought to
What? You didn't tell me.
well, surprise. This one was brought to my attention by one of our listeners. And he made sure to go out of his way and say that's a base running blunder. And I'm going to own up to it because, like yours, I think it runs a very fine line. But this base running blunder was because I referred to The Naked Gun as a lesser film. And you know what? Look, he's absolutely right to call me out on this, Amy, because I did misspeak. I love The Naked Gun. And this is the reason I'm promoting this own stereotype of being a film snob, of being a film elitist, because of the way I talk about films. I love The Naked Gun. I think The Naked Gun is hilarious. I also think it's an extremely well-made comedy. So, yeah, it's an absolute mistake on my part to refer to that film as a lesser film because it is absolutely not a lesser film. So, my apologies, and I appreciate that our listeners, check us. They check us so we don't wreck us, and so I really appreciate that. And please, if you guys have any opinions, if you guys want to call us out on stuff, by all means, go ahead and do that. Well, this is the fourth episode of the week. We had made a promise to you guys that we were going to try to drop content every day for you. So far, we're going to have content 4 for 4. We're going to try to make 5 for 5 happen, but we got to get 4 out of the way. Amy, how you feeling about the fact that we are delivering content every day?
I mean, this is what we're doing. We decided to do something. We've had a few base running blunders along the way, but I think we're gonna have a complete game. So I'm pretty proud of us.
All right, so this one is going to be very heavy on baseball. I know our episodes this past week have kind of been all over the place. So we've just been covering all sorts of topics, but that's what this show is about. This is what we told you guys when we first started the show, that this is what we were going to do. But this episode is going to be heavy on baseball, in particular, very heavy on the Dodgers. So let's start with this. Yamamoto made his second start of spring training on Wednesday, and his start went a little different than his previous start. What was apparent from the very beginning in that first inning is that he did not have the same level of control that he had in his first start. His efficiency in his first start was fantastic, but he was definitely having problems getting his off-speed pitches over the plate. And that to me just this is going off of his first start. The final numbers on Yamamoto, he went 3 innings. He gave up 6 hits, 5 runs. They were all earned. The 3 walks, I think, stand out, but he still had 4 Ks. But I think also what was caught people's attention was the number of pitches that he made. He had 58 pitches there. I mean, 32 of them were for strikes. But it seemed like a very different Yamamoto. What before I get to the reaction that we saw on social media to Yamamoto,
You mean the meltdown that happened?
you said it, not me. What did you see in that start? Did you even have an opportunity to watch the game, Amy?
I got to see pieces of it because I was in the middle of meetings. So I was kind of catching it on the sly after work. I had a couple appointments, but what I did see, like, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just a broken record where like it's spring training. I know in his post game interview he was talking about how like yes, it wasn't optimal, but essentially like he was also working on some stuff too. And Dave Roberts had already echoed that with, he's going to be just basically like going out there and throwing and working on his stuff. So while yes, it is a stark contrast to his first start, like this is what we want him to do. We want him to do this here. We want him to get used to like they're talking about the mound difference from Japan to the US. It's a little bit harder here. I guess it's a little softer packed in Japan, where his foot lands is a little bit different again with the packing of the dirt. So he's got some things to get used to. The fact that he had a great first outing, outstanding, wonderful. The fact that the second one went like this, as he's making adjustments, he's in a new country, like, I don't know, I guess to me, this just seems like it's par for the course. I'm not gonna start worrying yet.
And you know what? Austin Barnes did say that sometimes it is good for a baseball player to struggle. And he had said that, he's out there trying to figure out, things aren't working out for him. And so Austin Barnes put a positive spin on this, that this is actually good for him. What I also found interesting was Yamamoto's made 2 starts in spring training, and Austin Barnes has caught both of those starts. So I don't know if this is Austin Barnes trying to get job security because we don't know when Kershaw is going to show up this season. But hey, you got to keep me on this roster if I'm going to be Yamamoto's personal catcher. But you're right. I mean, but that's the funny thing about spring training, right? Whenever somebody does good in spring training, everybody's like, "Oh, this is awesome." But the minute somebody does bad in spring training, it's always like it's just spring training. It doesn't count. But these are habits, and again, with him, like we're going to talk about this later on. I mean, the Dodgers are already getting ready. A week from today, they're going to be en route to Korea. So Yamamoto may get one more start here in the Cactus League before we see him pitch for real in Korea. So while I totally understand what you're saying, Amy, in the sense like it's just spring training, I also think that as we're getting closer to the season, I think these habits, if we have bad habits, if these players are developing bad habits, they got to find a way to nip it in the bud and get into more of a consistent routine that is something that can be repeatable.
Being that he's only had 2 and we have to be conscious of he's coming from a 6-man rotation, we're potentially moving him to 5 depending on if we go 6. He usually has more rest than this. So if he can only legitimately have the 2 starts he's had at this point and then potentially one more, what would you have him do then? Because he's not going to play perfectly every game. And I guess to me, I'm not saying like it's spring training, like this doesn't count, who cares, but it's more like this is where I want him to work it out before we get to Seoul, Korea, before, we start the regular season, because I'm not one of those people who's like, it's the year's early. Like these games don't matter in the beginning of the year. To me, every game matters. Like, I don't care if it's the first week opening weekend. I don't care if it's midway through summer. We're going to win some, we're going to lose some, but to me, they all count the same. So
I thought his post-game interview was interesting because what he had mentioned there was that he didn't feel comfortable pitching out of the stretch. And it might be for all the reasons that you just mentioned in terms of the mound. But I guess if you want to draw a positive out of that inning, that outing is it allowed him to go ahead and work out of pitching out of the stretch. And I know this is when a bunch of Dodger fans are going to be like, who cares about pitching out of the stretch if nobody gets on? Well, if you watch the game, it wasn't like he got hit hard. There may have been maybe one ball that was hit hard in that outing, but the majority of the damage was done was because of the bases on balls, and the defense didn't help him out. And we're going to transition into the defense. Before we transition into the defense, I do have to ask you this. It was fascinating to me to watch the post-game interview with Yamamoto, because there seemed to have been a lost in translation moment with his interpreter. And I don't think I've seen that with Ohtani's interpreter. You're not in your head, Amy. Did you see the same thing?
I did. Yeah. I think it was when he was asking about pitching from the stretch. So I don't know if there wasn't like
Yeah.
a literal translation. I mean, I can only throw back to my days interpreting, and sometimes there I mean, in any language, sometimes there's not a word for word translation. So maybe the interpreter didn't know that word to be able to convey it. Maybe there just wasn't an accurate one from English to Japanese to be able to like, hey, this is what he means.
And that's probably something that he also needs to get used to, right? And that is like, I'm sure this
Trying
is the
not to
first
drop water bottles over here. Sorry about that. Just interrupted you. My whole
look,
table upended itself.
water bottles are very important here. But I mean, think about it. This is probably the first time he's had to work with a interpreter in terms of a post-game situation. Because I don't know if they used them in the WBC. Did they use them in the WBC?
I'm not sure, but I would be curious too, just like so when I was doing interpreting, there were specializations. So like you aren't just grabbing, anybody to come in and like, oh yeah, you know how to sign or you know how to speak Spanish, so you can go in and do this. It's people are specialized. You do legal interpreting, you do medical interpreting.
Right.
So I'm assuming if I think it's Hero is his name, does he have a baseball background? Has he been with Yamamoto for a long time? That goes back to your question of was he with them in the WBC? I don't know. I mean, this is his interpreter now, so I'm assuming he must have some baseball knowledge, or he's just going to be learning on the fly, and we're all along for that ride too.
Yeah, it just seemed like there was a very, noticeable contrast, because I don't feel like there's that level of disconnect that I feel like with Ohtani and his interpreter. And obviously, I think they have a much stronger relationship. They've been working with each other much longer. That seems to go very smoothly. This to me, it was noticeable because it seemed like the interpreter was asking clarification questions to the reporters. The reporters sometimes had to rephrase their questions to try to get their point across.
And
So
that happens sometimes too, though. Like to be honest, that is going to happen. Not every interpreter is going to have that understanding of the topic, and sometimes people are talking quick and there's a lot going on, and you need to just make sure you heard that right before you convey it, because you are that conduit between the two individuals. So, I mean, I would prefer that they did ask for clarification rather than just winging it like, I think this is what he said. Let me just tell you, and then hope you give me an answer back that like meshes. So it's going to happen.
And I want to be clear. I'm not being critical of Yamamoto's translator. I just was curious if anybody else had noticed it, or was it just me? Was I reading too much into it? But it just felt during that post game interview that there was a little bit of a loss in translation there. But we digress. So we had mentioned the fact that Yamamoto, it didn't seem like he was hit that hard. A lot of it just felt like it was self-inflicted because of his control. It just wasn't there in that game. But I had mentioned that his defense didn't help him. And if you've been watching social media lately, a lot has been said. I know there's articles that have already been written about the left side of the infield. And in particular, it's Gavin Lux and Max Muncy. Those are the two guys that are getting the heat. They are getting the level of criticism. In particular, Gavin Lux, what seems to be the issue with Gavin Lux is his throwing. That seems to be what I mean, Freddie Freeman saved them of some errors with some of the throws that he made, but it's not only just that he's throwing the ball in the dirt. There just doesn't seem to be much on his throws to first base. But in the Max Muncy thing is interesting because Max Muncy said this, and I forget where he said it. I don't know if it was in an interview or if he was on Foul Territory when he said it. And I'm wondering if you heard the same quote, Amy, where he was just basically saying, it's like, look, I have no option, but in order for my defense needs to get better, because if my defense doesn't get better, there's not a spot for me on the field because I can't DH. The Dodgers have locked up their DH position for the next 10 years. So if I want to stay with the Dodgers, if I want to play the rest of my career with the Dodgers, I need to hold my own on the field. And I really appreciated his candor there. So a lot has been made about the amount of ground balls that he's taking, the amount of effort that he's putting into his defense, the fact that he's lost weight and he's changed his body, and supposedly that's going to help him, with his defense. But we saw what happened in that game, and I think that's the fear with everybody is this might cost Dodgers games. It may cost them in the regular season, but they'll be able to overcome it because there's so many games. But in the postseason, if you have teams that their sole strategy is just hit it to the left side of the field, that's where you're going to see the level of criticism. And then that's where you're going to see all the heat that we saw on social media, put it at times 10 at that point.
I think this is what makes our team human, though, where I think this is how other teams who don't have superstar rosters feel. Like not everybody, like some people, like the Angels, they have Mike Trout, they have other good players, but you've got who you've got on the field. So if Muncy's at third base, he's going to do his best. We can't compare him to the, who came before him. He's not going to be Justin Turner. But he is who we have, and like who would we back him up with? And then what do we do with him? Are we just gonna like DFA him? Because he's not a horrible third baseman. He has some work to do on defense. But like, what do you do then in that situation?
Well, what I find really interesting about this whole conversation, and I wanted to start with Muncy before we go to Lux, because I feel Lux is taking a lot more heat about his defense than Muncy is right now. But we have always said about Gavin Lux that Miguel Rojas is going to come in as a late inning replacement for him defensively. Now, the thing is the Dodgers more than likely are going to be carrying 4 players on the bench. So if Rojas is already going to be used as a replacement for Gavin Lux, if you have to use that same strategy for Max Muncy, now you're using someone else on your bench. Now, the thing is the Dodgers have players that can play multiple positions. So I know it was mentioned when Kike was signed that Kike would be playing at third base. He would be spending some time at third base. So maybe if it becomes this huge problem that it seems everybody's anticipating, we're going to see Kike at third base. Now, I think I trust in terms of the glove. I think I probably trust Kike more at third base than Max Muncy. But overall, is that a solution that you want? Kike playing third over Muncy?
Well, and then you've got Muncy's bat is a little bit more consistent than Kike's. And if Muncy isn't hitting, he's at least walking. So it's the trade-offs, right? It's the game we play with every position. I mean, I think we obviously give Muncy a chance, right? He let him start the season. Let's see how it shakes out. Again, I'm not trying to give everybody a pass like, oh, it's spring training. These games don't count. But this is where they are warming up. We've been in for a week and a half now, going on 2 weeks. Like, this is where they're going to get that strategy. They reported a little bit earlier for, when pitchers and catchers reported, when players reported, but those weren't the competitive games that they're now playing in. So these are the simulations where we want them to get it out of their system. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for, because to your point, what are we going to do? We're just going to replace him with Kike and then flop it. So then Muncy's going to come in off the bench. Is that fair to Muncy? I don't know. So I'm just hoping that in the next 7 games that we have, and tonight's got postponed, hopefully we're able to work these kinks out, because if we're seeing them and social media is exploding, I guarantee the front office is seeing it. So I doubt they're sitting and just twiddling their thumbs like, well, I hope it works out. I'm sure they're trying to strategize something.
And before you guys, listening or watching go, relax, the season hasn't even started. I have to say this so you guys are perfectly clear, because sometimes I can't take things for granted. It's like, look, I fully expect that the Dodgers are going to give Max Muncy and Gavin Lux every opportunity to play every day at those positions. But they're already making a big issue about Gavin Lux's defense at short, and when the season hasn't even started. If this continues, and it's going to be one of those conversations that's going to continue to happen. We saw this last year with other players, in particular Noah Syndergaard, and it's just like, how many times can you guys keep throwing him out there? He's not producing. And look, to Dave Roberts' credit, I think Dave Roberts, after a certain point, was just very honest with the media and was just like, yeah, we're going to have to start asking ourselves that question. How much longer can we throw him out there? I don't think they're at that point yet with both Max Muncy and Gavin Lux. But let's go to Gavin Lux, because I think something happened today that I was surprised that it happened, but I don't know, Amy. I need to ask you if it's fair. So Dave Roberts was asked about Gavin Lux, and in particular Gavin Lux's defense. And Roberts in particular asked about, is Gavin Lux still going to be your starting shortstop once the season starts? And Dave Roberts was non-committal. And he basically said, I don't know. He doesn't know he doesn't know the answer to that question. But they said they're still confident in him. And that, to me, I don't know if that's backing up Gavin Lux. And
well, and he went on to say, obviously performance is paramount at this level and for our team vying to win a championship. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know that it will be in the vein of whatever gives us the best chance to win. So it sounds like he's covering his bases both ways. Like, yeah, we'll put him out there, we'll play him, but if this continues not to work out, I don't want to say he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, because that sounds negative. I really do feel like he's just covering he's covering his bases in both respects. He wants to give Gavin that shot, but there definitely are some question marks as far as, how fast he'll be able to bounce back from a year of not playing after an injury.
Was it fair for Roberts to make that statement? It's spring training. The season hasn't started. And the reason why I'm trying to be fair to Lux, because let's be honest, okay, everybody, he never had this reputation of being a defensive whiz. Like, the reason why Gavin Lux is in the major leagues is because of his baseball bat. It's his bat. And his bat has looked fine in spring training. His hitting is not the problem. The problem seems to be his throwing. But now I don't think the fans are being fair to him. And I know a lot of fans will cite, well, Juan, this isn't the first time we're seeing this. Back when he was playing second base, like as far back as 2019, when he was in the minors, he had issues throwing the ball. They had Jose Vizcaíno working with him to try to help him with his throwing issues. So I understand the argument, but also I think we lose sight of the fact that Lux, and he said this when they asked him, like, he's still trying to feel things out with his knee. He's still trying to get comfortable with that. And like, the guy has not played defense in over a year and a half. And so what we're doing, and he even said it, I feel a little sympathy for the guy, because he's like, look, I'm taking ground balls with the minor league camp. I'm trying to take as many ground balls as I can to get comfortable. He's trying to expedite the process.
But taking ground balls, that's great. That's great to build up the muscle memory. But when you were in a competitive situation where you have a split second to make that decision or make that play, it's different than if Dino Ebel's just practicing with you on the field before a game. So I think in that respect, like all we can do is give him reps. Now, the question is how long do we continue to give him reps if there is no improvement? But he literally just came off of an entire year from an injury. So he is going to be like, I get up off the couch after sitting and watching a game for a couple hours, and my back is a little sore. My legs are stiff. That's just watching a game. This guy hasn't played in a year. There's going to be some growing pains. And this, again, much like Yamamoto, this is the place where you want to work those out. And these guys aren't going out there. I'm sure when they get put in the roster, they are stoked to be part of the show. They're stoked to be part of the starting lineup. But at the same time, they're going to do the best that they can, just like Mookie and Freddie in the postseason. Everybody's doing the best that they can. Nobody's going out thinking, hey, how many errors can I commit today? Like, we don't come out here like, hey, how can I blow something so we can do a base running blunder at the beginning of the next show? I think it's funny because you mentioned Dave Roberts and the message he gave to the media. And I think he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. Because if he doesn't come out and say something, then everybody's going to lambast him for like, you're just, staying on the positive side of everything. And, you're not saying it how it is. And so he kind of alludes to it without knocking down his player who's trying, and he still gets it. Like, you can't win. Like, this is where do you even like baseball, bro? Like, are we just looking for the negatives in this game at this point? Yes, we can be concerned about players, but at the same time, like, can we not just enjoy the game? Can we not just enjoy that spring training's happening and baseball's almost here? Like, we have the best team on the field. I just don't understand.
This has to be mental at this point, right, Amy? I mean, look, I know the Dodgers and Robert said this, the organization, that they still have full confidence in Gavin Lux. But the fact that this is becoming a narrative already, I mean, the guy's human, right? Like,
well, who's it a narrative for, though? It's a narrative for people out there. It's not his narrative. He's going out there and playing. We're putting this narrative on him. So if he's getting any head trash as a byproduct from it, that's us. Or we could just go and watch the games and enjoy the fact that he's playing and see himself build himself up over time and see what happens.
I think because I saw this with Walker Buehler earlier, when Walker Buehler was talking to the media and he was addressing this narrative that his rehab is not going as well as, it's like he's paying attention, like he's hearing this stuff, right? I feel, again, this is what I'm referring to, the human aspect. You can try to block something out as much as you can, right? But if someone is talking shit on you or you keep hearing the same thing, as much as you want to block it out, I think it's going to affect you. So I'm curious if these throwing issues that he has, is it because his confidence is being affected? And that's why the Dodgers are being very particular in using that word, that we still have a lot of confidence in him, because they're trying to build up the confidence in him. And if that's what's affecting him, because it doesn't seem, in terms of mechanics, or maybe it's a mechanical issue, the way he's throwing, and the fact that there just doesn't seem to be. Look, I don't expect the guy to be Sean Dunston and throwing like 98 miles per hour over to first base, but it's just, he is playing one of the most important positions on the field. And look, Yamamoto has a lot to be blamed for how he performed, but you asked the question, if Miguel Rojas was playing shortstop, does Miguel Rojas make those plays? And does he get him out of the inning? Therefore, it's less pitches for Yamamoto. And I get it, Amy. You're looking at me like you're going into the weeds way too much.
No,
I
just like the whole like blamed thing. Like, sometimes I think you and I are saying the same thing. I think we're both alluding to the fact that this is like this could potentially be getting to Lux. We're just saying it different ways.
Right.
But I think it's also just the fact that like this is what gets me about baseball. So I will try to stay off of my soapbox. But like, why are we blaming a pitcher? Like, again, these are spring training games. They're all working out the kinks. We don't even know what the game plan in the clubhouse or the whatever it was is hey, you work on this today. Hey, I want you to work on that. Hey, you might mess some of this up because I want you to do it a different way. We're not privy to any of that. None of us are managers. We don't, maybe some of us have more baseball experience than others, but who are we to be judging so much of this game? And I'm sure that's where people are going to disagree. And hey, we're fans, we watch this game. This is our right. But like, I mean, I guess you can watch the game that way, but do you enjoy watching the game and having, not you, but like just in general, like, is that fun for you to watch baseball that way? Because I like to enjoy the game.
Well, I also just think that this is it's trauma. Watching this, you watch a guy who is struggling on the field, and I think this is projection. This is Dodger fans saying, okay, like that game against the White Sox, they were down early, but the offense picked them up and they came back and they won that game. But if this happens in the playoffs, I don't think you can expect that your offense is going to pick you up because you're just going to be facing better pitching in the playoffs. You're going to be facing better teams. So I think this is where the projection comes in, where fans are like, look, this is going to affect us at the worst time. It's a big air from Lux in the playoffs. So it's like, we need to fix it. Look, I'm on record as saying, Amy, I think they're going to give him at least until the end of May. If his defense is that much of a problem by the end of May, I think, and I don't know. I know there's different opinions here. Like there's some people that are already thinking, because of Robert's statement today, that he's going to be platooning once the season starts. And it's a convenient platoon because Miguel Rojas is right-handed and Gavin Lux is left-handed, right? But I was under the impression before Roberts made these statements that they are going to give Muncy and Gavin Lux a chance to work this out and see, because look, I'll put this as an exhibit for my argument here. James Outman's defense at the beginning of last year, a lot of people said needed a lot of improvement. And by the end of the year last year, all I heard from people who cover the game was how much James Outman had improved defensively in the outfield. Now, stop me, because I know there's going to be some viewer or some listeners going to go, yeah, but what about that play in the playoffs, Juan? What about his defense there? And I think that's where the projection comes in, Amy, where it's like, this defensive issue is going to bite the Dodgers at the worst time.
Okay, so then we just, unless we have perfect players, then I guess we just don't play. Like, I know I'm going to the total extreme, like, but like, James Outman was given the opportunity to improve over a season, to your exhibit. So, I mean, we we don't have this huge roster behind us of just backup starting shortstop, starting third baseman. We have people we can platoon, but it's not like we're going out and we're getting we're just going to replace Muncy with another third baseman. Like, these are the guys we got. They're going to do their best out there. Hopefully they, as the season progresses, they work out some of the kinks. This is baseball. It's baseball.
Right. And look, a lot of what we do on this show is we react to the stuff that fans are telling us, right? That's what this show is about. And so, of course, and Fabian Ardaya put this in his article in The Athletic today, brought up the name Adames from the Brewers again, right? And it seems like the Brewers are reluctant to trade him, but whenever there's a shortstop, all the Dodger fans always, bring up Adames. And to me, that's like fantasy baseball talk, right? Because everybody always like, go get Adames. It's like, oh yeah, the Brewers are just going to hand him over on a silver platter. They're not going to ask for anything. I get it. Look, a lot of this conversation is just part of me is like, this is what fans want to hear. This is what they want to go ahead and talk about. But again, a lot of times when I talk about the Dodgers, I like to put my Andrew Friedman hat. I want to, how does Andrew Friedman think? And I just feel like they're going to give Lux time to earn the shortstop position and win it, because he was supposed to be their shortstop last year, because he ended up getting hurt. But I am curious with everything that's going on this year, the pressure to win the World Series. If this stuff continues, were you not surprised by the fact that Dave Roberts, before the season even started, is saying, I don't know if Gavin Lux is going to be our starting shortstop? Like back when the guys in the bullpen were struggling, how many times did he, when Kenley was struggling, or, how many times did he sit there and go, Kenley's our closer, Kenley's our closer? You didn't get that reinforcement when it came to Gavin Lux. And that to me is what's surprising.
It definitely is surprising. I guess what I'm curious about is, has, much like we're talking about projecting on Lux or Muncy, has that started now with Dave Roberts? Like, are we at that point now where he is listening to what people are saying? So instead of just protect the player, all right, I'm gonna walk both sides. I don't know. Is this his new leaf for the season? Who knows? But to your point, yeah, I mean, I was surprised that he did come out and say it, just because of how consistent he usually is with his narrative.
You said it beautifully right there, Amy, because Dave Roberts is a player's manager, and what he has always done consistently is protect players. And that's why, to me, this seemed odd that he wasn't out there quick to protect Gavin Lux. And I am curious, we talked about Dave Roberts in past episodes. I am curious if he is going to be managing with a lot more urgency, because whether we like it or not, Amy, he is going to be set up as the fall guy if the Dodgers don't win the World Series this year. Before we segue, there's a couple more things about Lux. I believe they asked Roberts, or they had asked someone else in the organization, if this was the yips with Gavin Lux, like these throwing issues that he has. Can you attribute it to the yips? And the yips, to me, is maybe one of the most fascinating psychological illnesses I think I've ever come across, where nobody understands where the yips comes. Nobody knows why they get the yips, how to get rid of the yips. I mean, you had Chuck Knobloch, you had Steve Sachs, you had really good, you had all-stars that all of a sudden come across with the yips, and in some cases, it ends up ending their career. And Rick Ankiel, I think, is one of the most fascinating. He was a pitcher, and all of a sudden he gets the yips, and he decides to come back as an outfielder. But the Dodgers were very quick to say they don't think it's the yips with Gavin Lux. What are your thoughts on the yips, Amy?
I mean, I'm just looking at some of the quotes that Roberts was saying about this. Like, I think it's a little bit mental. I think that's natural, and anything you want to hit the ground running. And when it doesn't go the way you hoped and prepared for, I think confidence can be shaken. But to be fair, there's not a player out there who at times their confidence isn't shaken. It's about these guys bouncing back from that. I guess that's what I want to see. If this is the yips, if this is, hearing all the chatter from outside, I just hope that this is something that can build a little bit more character, build a little bit more strength, and get him over that hump. And then, he comes back this season and he's even better because of it. Because to your point, we don't know where the yips come from, and there has never been a solution for, like, all right, cool, this is how you solve it. Here, let me whisper in your ear so that you can pass this on, but don't tell everybody. Like, it happens. I don't think it's not just in baseball. That happens in life, and at some point you hit your stride and things get a little bit better for it. So I'm hoping that happens for Lux.
For those wondering, if you're listening on the audio portion of the podcast and you keep hearing the sirens, we're not recording in a studio, so sometimes life gets in the way. And I think Amy lives in the bad part of town, so
that's not my house. Thanks.
Was it yours?
No.
Where am I hearing sirens from? Did you not hear the sirens?
I heard them, but they're not over here.
Well, okay, maybe I'm in the bad part of town.
I like how you threw me under the bus.
If the show gets if the show gets interrupted because they're coming in to arrest me, then you'll know I never saw them coming. One last thing on Lux, because I've seen this thrown around and I'm just like, I don't buy this at all. But this idea of switching Gavin Lux and Mookie Betts, having Mookie. So you saw this too, right, Amy?
I heard it, yes.
And I'm just like, look, guys, I think they moved Mookie Betts to second base to try to make to lighten his load, and at this point, you know, I think this was the plan all along. They always wanted to eventually, I think, move Mookie to second base to make it easier for him. And I was very impressed with the way Mookie played shortstop last year. I don't think Mookie can do that for a whole season. And I know he was an infielder when he got drafted, but look, we're talking about shortstop at a major league level, and I don't know if Mookie playing shortstop is even in the best interest for the Dodgers.
I mean, he potentially could. I think in that Athletic article from last week, he was talking about just even coming up from Little League. Like he played multiple positions on multiple teams. So he had a different jersey, a different position for every team. And so that's how he grew up playing baseball. So for him, it's not about I grew up playing this position and this is the only one I can play. He thanked his father for the way that he trained him because he can play baseball. He can play all over the diamond. So I mean, potentially I guess he could do it, but to your point, I don't know that that's necessarily in the plan for the Dodgers, especially when we have somebody like Miguel Rojas and we have Kike and sometimes Chris Taylor to play shortstop. But
you say that so hesitantly. I thought you had like a lump in your throat. Does the idea of Chris Taylor playing shortstop scare you that much? I mean, remember when we had Seager and Seager got hurt? Chris Taylor had to play shortstop for a good chunk of the season.
I know. And so back to Rojas. But Rojas, I think he's
somebody
yes.
check on Chris Taylor. He just caught a stray, and I don't think he saw it coming.
Chris Taylor is a great player. He's very he can play all over the diamond. But Rojas, I think, is underrated. I think he is great at shortstop. He's very dynamic, in my opinion, at that position. Everybody will bring up, but his offense. And yes, I get that. But okay, so where do you want to give and take then? Do you stack your lineup as far as batting, and then Rojas contributes when he can, and you have him at shortstop, and you know that shortstop is secure, or do you swap it? Do you want Lux's bat in the lineup and you take his defense? Because again, these are the trade-offs we're doing all over the diamond. And it's not going to be perfect. Like you said, this isn't fantasy football. We as fans don't get to just swap in our players whenever we want. These are our players. And I think where I get so passionate about like, let them play is because I've been in that stadium when we are surrounded by fans who are booing our own players. And it makes me sick to my stomach. And so for me, the opposite of that is supporting these guys because I know I couldn't get out on the field and do that. And I like to enjoy watching the game. And so that's where a lot of my passion for let them play comes from.
So for those of you playing at home, Bad News Bears reference there for Amy with the let them play. And not the original. I believe this is the Bad News Bears back in training. It's the one where they play in the Astrodome and they start chanting. Amy clearly doesn't know. See, everybody calls me a film slump.
It's been so long since I've seen those movies. I guess I have
everybody
some homework.
calls me a film slob, and here I am a film snob, excuse me. Everybody's out here. I'm the one that caught that you were quoting, and you didn't even know you were quoting the Bad News Bears.
I was channeling it. Oh, there you go. Thank you for catching it.
It was the Bad News Bears back in training when they play in the Astrodome and they won't let them finish the game, and then everybody starts chanting, "Let them play, let them play."
I feel like I'm there right now.
Exactly. So we're gonna last one before we end the show here. Dave Roberts came out and made it official, I guess, that Daniel Hudson is going to be in the Dodgers bullpen for the opening day roster. Now, part of me understands why that decision was made. I always thought that Daniel Hudson was going to go ahead and make the team anyways. But Daniel Hudson was signed to a minor league deal, and he had an opt out that he could exercise by March 15th. So to me, this was a move that the Dodgers
the
did.
Ides of March. Nice.
Oh, look at you with your reference Shakespeare over here. Big Julius Caesar person? All right, I get
Et
it.
tu, Juan, et tu.
Oh, wow. Take a bow. Take a bow, man.
I'm curtsying. You can't see it, but that was my flourish.
So this is a move that I think the Dodgers are making just because they don't want to lose Daniel Hudson. But I know you have the numbers on him. He hasn't looked that impressive to me in spring training, but I think this is the Dodgers looking at what Daniel Hudson has done on the back of his baseball card, and they have faith in that.
Yeah, I mean, when he was with us in 2022, he had an ERA of 2.22. But he did only play in 3 games last year before he got injured. So, so thus far this spring, he's been in 4 games. He has a 1 win-loss record, 4.91 ERA. He's pitched in 3 2/3 innings. And he's gotten 3 strikeouts. So, like you said, like he showed up, he's pitched. I think to your point, you've said it multiple times on this show, we can never have too many arms. So I think this is just another way to bolster the bullpen, have an arm that has been proven in the past prior to injury. And again, to another one of your points, Juan, again, you are right.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You are right.
I didn't hear you. What are you saying?
You are right.
I know I love your voice, but I'm having a hard time because you sang it.
You're right.
It's amazing to me. Every time you whisper it, I hear it so clearly.
But I think it goes back to like the worry that because he's been injured before, will he be able to, again, like the rest of the players we've been discussing, bounce back? So that's just kind of a throwback to any of our guys, though. Like Muncy's been hit twice already in spring training. So that might factor in too to our previous conversation. Hopefully Hudson can bounce back from, being off all last year. And to kind of round it all out, I really hope Lux gets the reps in that he needs. And, these 3 guys can prove themselves this year.
I will say this. I feel that when Daniel Hudson has been healthy, he has pitched very well for the Dodgers, and he has been an asset to that team. So I don't think it's a huge deal. Like I said, I expected him that he was going to be in the bullpen, but now this is a numbers game. And like I said, pretty soon the Dodgers are only going to be in Arizona for 1 more week. So once they start heading over to Korea, we're going to see who's going to make the opening day roster in Korea. And I'm letting you guys know already, I think there's going to be a different opening day roster in Korea than the opening day roster that we see when they return back to LA to play the Cardinals for the opening day in the United States. So before we wrap things up, any last words, Amy?
Let the guys play.
Let them play. Let them play. So as a reminder, for those of you who have been listening on the audio portion, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast and make sure you rate the podcast, write us a review. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification button, give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, follow us on social media on X at BB Shangri-La, on Instagram, Threads, and Twitch at Baseball Shangri-La. This has been another episode of Baseball Shangri-La. She is Amy Cuevas, and I am Juan Ramirez. Amy, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, people.